All right, hey everybody. We are here in the World Bank's atrium in Washington, D.C. I'm Raj Kumar, President and Editor-in-Chief of DevX. You see a lot of folks walking around the background. It's kind of starting to calm down a little here at Friday evening at the World Bank spring meetings, but it has been a buzzy day. Lots going on, and one of the big topics of this week is digital ID. Sounds kind of technical, sounds a little nerdy, a little boring, but it's actually an underlying technology we all kind of take for granted. We all have our ID, our passport, our many forms of ID, really, your birth certificate, and yet for about 1 billion people on the planet, there is no ID. They don't have anything that identifies them. Not an easy problem to solve, but technology is coming into the picture and things are moving really quickly. Lots of opportunities, but also lots of challenges. So we've got here with me somebody who's working on the front lines of this, Toby Norman. Toby, welcome.
Great to be here, Raj. Thanks very much.
And you are the co-founder and CEO of a company called Simprints.
Simprints, that's right.
It's out of Cambridge University, I understand, in the UK.
Yeah.
You were one of 4 co-founders, all kind of nerdy PhDs, we were just saying a second ago. I get the prints part of Simprints is fingerprints, right?
Yep, that's
What's
right.
the sim part?
Yeah. So Simprints is basically a technology company, came out of the University of Cambridge, and what it's trying to do is radically increase transparency and effectiveness in global development. So we use technology like biometrics, so like fingerprint technology, to make sure that every vaccine, every dollar, every bednet, every government service reaches its intended beneficiary.
Right.
So the prints comes from the fingerprints. We actually use a couple of different types of biometric modalities. The Simprints was originally for a SIM card, because we were looking at the mobile revolution at the time. Frankly, these days that's much less relevant, so Simprints is one word. What hasn't changed, and what's I think really exciting, is digital is touching every part of development work. We're trying to figure out how can we use technologies like biometrics to make it more effective, so you can really see who you've reached and who you've missed.
Let's stay on the nerdy stuff for a second.
Yeah.
So you said prints are different, there's different modalities out there.
That's right.
I just want to make sure I understand. There's the ability now, like if you have an iPhone, you can do a facial scan, right, that'll recognize you.
Yeah.
Fingerprints, of course, palm prints, I think is another one. These are the kinds of things you're working on?
Yeah. So there's a whole bunch of biometric modalities. So you can use your fingerprints. Most of us, for example, will unlock our smartphones without fingerprints. Facial recognition is moving really fast. So for example, now with like the iPhone 10 and others, you can actually use facial recognition to unlock the technology. Some of the biggest deployments of biometrics, for example, for ID, have used things like iris. For example, India's Aadhaar program, and it uses a combination of fingerprints and iris. There's advantages and disadvantages to every type of biometric, and there's literally every type you can imagine. For example, there are companies that are working, I kid you not, on butt prints. So you sit down in a car seat, and you can start your car by actually using the imprints of your butt. So there's a massive range.
Prove me wrong, but it sounds like the kind of idea we will be making jokes about 10 years from now. Maybe I'm wrong.
So. Let's see. What I think brings us maybe more to the serious part is that actually with nearly 1 billion people worldwide not having ID, like that's 1 in every 7 people on the planet almost, it's a huge number. Without some type of ID, these folks are functionally invisible in the eyes of the world, unable to access many government services, incredibly hard for example, service providers to see who have we reached and who have we missed.
Did this person get a vaccine or not? Right, you show up at school and try to enroll your kid, but you don't have an ID. The kid doesn't have an ID, right? These are the kinds of things people face day to day.
I mean, if I went into, for example, your pocket right now, and I took out your driver's license, I threw away your passport, I deleted your social security number, what would you do? You couldn't leave the country, you couldn't get an education, you couldn't access social services. It's a huge deal for a lot of people.
Yeah, now there's lots of companies, as you say, already working on biometrics. You got your phones, and many of us in the developed world, we're used to using this stuff. Why does a company like Simprints have to exist to target the people who are maybe in the lowest resource settings? What are some of the special challenges?
Yeah, that's a really good question. There's a couple challenges that are really unique to context that when we came in, folks weren't working on, which is part of the reason that we got involved in this space. One of the first ones was accuracy. So for example, fingerprints are one of the most widely used. It's a very privacy-conscious biometric. It's active rather than passive, so I have to choose to give a fingerprint, which is a really good thing. It's culturally appropriate in a lot of contexts. So you work in a place like Bangladesh, where for example, facial recognition or iris scanning isn't great when you have populations who might be veiled or have cultural norms around not giving a photo of your face away like that. The challenge we saw is that most of the biometric technology on the market was designed for Western fingerprints, right? Sort of soft, white. I've spent most of my life with my fingers on a keyboard. But if you've been doing manual labor on a farm for 20 years, or if you've been working pulling rickshaws or doing construction in the city, or actually as women, we see a lot of women have thermal burns on their fingertips for cooking on open fires, you get scarred, damaged, worn fingerprint profiles that don't work with a lot of technology on the market. When we were at the University of Cambridge, we did a study with over 135,000 fingerprints from 4 very low-income countries. And we saw that over 70% had some type of damage that made them practically unusable with the tech that was on the market at the time. So I think that was one of the first key innovations. 2 others that I hope we're going to talk about.
Yeah, tell me quickly, because we're running a little bit out of time, but I want to hear them.
Yeah, and 1, privacy. How do you get genuinely informed consent from someone, for example, who maybe has 2 to 3 years of education in their entire lives? And 2, how do you actually design and deploy this technology in really low resource contexts? So I think those have been some of the 3 challenges that really pulled Simprints into this space.
Yeah, so it sounds like what you're doing that's a little bit unique is you're not just a technology provider that's building the fingerprint technology, you're actually thinking vertically about how do you take that tech and apply it in the field, right? So give us an example. Who are some of the partners or some projects that you might be working on?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we work with a wide range of NGO and government partners. So for example, one of our key partners is BRAC in Bangladesh.
Which is the largest NGO in the world. A lot of people don't know that.
The largest NGO in the world. And so we work with their health program. So when their frontline health workers are going house to house, enrolling mothers in maternal health care, we use a fingerprint to link that mother to a consistent ID. So when she gets her first prenatal checkup, her second prenatal checkup, her third prenatal checkup, when she eventually has a kid and then you want to enroll the kid for vaccinations and follow-up care, we're able to actually allow them to have a consistent medical record for all of those care visits. Meaning that if you got 4 fingerprints from that mom, she's actually been seen 4 times. That's a huge challenge in our field.
Now, one of the reasons we're here today is that the World Bank has a special unit that they've created just to work on these issues. And part of the reason they created it was there was a lot of excitement around this issue of digital ID. But as people were rolling and saying, we're going to roll out digital ID, they kind of didn't necessarily right at the beginning say, but what about data privacy and protection? How do we make sure, for example, someone isn't ID'd and then somebody can abuse their human rights by identifying them, right? So those issues are now being taken into account more, and this unit, the World Bank, is advising people. One of the things that they put on, and one of the reasons we're both here today, is this Mission Billion Challenge, right? Which was to we're going to get to those next billion people, but how do we do it in a way that protects their data and their rights? So you were up on stage earlier, and you did something pretty unique, which is you won the Judges Award and the People's Choice Award. I'm not sure all the other contestants were too happy about this, but you came away with the 2 big prizes, both first prizes. Why are you here for that? What does it do for you guys at Simprint? Why does this matter to you that the World Bank is in this space and partnering with you with a challenge like this?
Well, first let me just say I thought the other contestants were actually incredible, and I'm geeking out a little bit about some of the stuff I saw them do is really amazing. Privacy is incredibly important, and I think now we're starting to develop a better public consciousness about it than we had a couple of years ago. You look at, obviously, the Facebook and Cambridge Analytica scandals, what that's done to our election. You look, for example, at what it's done in terms of some of the genocides in the world, or ethnic cleansing. Collecting data like ethnicity and not having strong privacy, not having informed consent. This is a massive deal. It might not always sound like the sexiest subject, but actually if we're going to have more and more digital IDs out there, which I think we should, and we can do a lot of good with these things, vaccinations, healthcare records, education, access to bank accounts, but we've got to take privacy seriously. And so I think what this initiative is trying to do is actually look at, okay, what's the field of innovations that are here? What are some of the innovations that we can use to better protect the privacy rights, of everyone, including the world's most vulnerable citizens? And that's what Simprints was here to pitch today.
What are you going to do with your award? I think it's $50,000, but what are you going to do with it?
So what we're trying to develop is an open source privacy toolkit, completely vendor agnostic, but a way that helps organizations get genuinely informed consent, even from folks who maybe don't have a lot of education, uses customized audio consent notices so people who aren't literate can actually understand what's going on, brings local leaders into the process so you actually get, even with minority or tribal dialects, people understand what's happening and you have the right champions. And finally, take seriously protection against fraud, because one of the things that we've seen in our field deployments of Simprints is sometimes good intentions, like strong privacy notices, can actually enable fraud, and that's a really bad thing in this space.
Yeah, there's so many stories in development of kind of good intentions gone awry. In fact, I've just written a book which talks a lot about how we're moving from an era of good intentions to an era of like a competition for good results.
Yes.
And I've got in the book a bunch of stories about where people were trying their best, but actually, things turned out to be counterproductive, especially in this era. Where we have technologies that can scale fast, that can be really pervasive and invasive in someone's life and privacy. The potential for negative results is a lot higher if we don't get it right. So I'm so glad you're part of this, the World Bank is part of this. It's the kind of thing we need to be going into with our eyes very wide open.
Yeah, 100%.
I think we got to wrap up, but I want to tell people who are following us on this conversation to follow you guys at Simprints. What's your? How do they find you at Twitter?
So at Simprints, Simprints, or find us at simprints.com. We'd love to talk with you guys.
Yeah, and look for me at Raj at DevX on Twitter. And this is an issue we're covering at DevX a lot, and I know you guys are at the forefront of it. Congratulations on the awards today, and look forward to following your success.
Real pleasure. Thanks a lot, Raj.